Quadratif. Hey y'all. So I'm gonna be sharing here, as you can see by the title. I'm not sure which I'll settle on between top 3 tips preparing for the GRE, or really why you shouldn't worry about it, or may not want to worry about it as much. So I'm gonna go over 3 resources here that I think are pretty common, but I want to share. They were useful for me. And then I'll share my scores at the end, so stick around for that. And then the impact that this had. And you could go back and watch some of my grad school videos, particularly the one on applying to 22 grad schools, where I feel like I probably relate that in there some as well, if you'd like more. So to start off, let's just jump right into the 3 resources. So the first one, and you can get these at your local library online, but the Princeton GRE prep, I found that pretty useful. And this is, I should say, this is for like the standard GRE. There's GRE for certain fields and things like that, and I don't know anything about that. So this is just a standard one that has the 3 sections of verbal reasoning, quantitative reasoning, and analytical writing, which is pretty universal for mental health fields. If you're applying to a PhD in psychology, this is going to be the test you'll be taking, as far as I know. So, in other fields. So that's the first one, Princeton GRE. And then the next one, and not necessarily in any order, is going to be the Magoos GRE. And they probably have a book. They've got a website, a YouTube channel as well. Maybe I'll link one of their videos in the description, but if not, it's just Magoos GRE, Magoosh. And then, so like I'm looking at a video right here entitled Vocabulary Builder Words GRE Vocabulary Wednesday. And then the last one is ETS themselves. ETS is who does the GRE. Their website is ets.org. And on there, they have free practice tests. So all this advice is if you're on a budget, not looking to spend money to prep. There's courses and things as well you can take. And then obviously the more time you have, the better. And you can also take the test more than once. And they'll take, your most recent score. And check with some of the schools. I know there's also cases, and this will make sense too in the context when I share my scores, that if you end up, say you do really well in one section than the other, and if you take it multiple times, some places will take just your highest scores in those certain sections, so you could then focus on the math if you didn't do so strong on that the next time. So yeah, I'm going to keep this video pretty brief, but I guess the last thing I'll really share before I even get to the score is that you may not want to focus on it as much because a couple reasons. A lot of places will look at your whole entire application holistically. So, meaning and including your essay can be something you work on. So let's just say you don't test well. Like I don't test well. So the big surprise is my scores aren't very high. And I also was applying while I was last minute. I added my GRE into it last minute for some of the schools I applied to. The other thing is just remember as you're taking it, and if you're apprehensive about taking it, and the thing I like about these study books, they talk about this, particularly I remember this of the Princeton book, is it's just a test. So doing poorly or well doesn't mean you're smart, doesn't mean you're not smart. It just means that you figured out how the test works. That's it. Huge period. Now, is it going to help if you know vocab words? Of course. Is it going to help if you remember circumferences and things like that? Yes. But, the fact is a lot of the stuff we're not using in daily language, and depending on your vocabulary for different reasons, including, if you're first generation, if English isn't your first language, and just in general, you just may not know a lot of the words. So I really, if you were going to pick one, I'd start with the Princeton. And then I would say, I can't remember if there's anything else I was going to say, but let me just jump into my scores here. So let's see here. So the way it works, and I think it changes every year, so I don't know how this actually applies. I took it last year. I actually took it in November of 2017, so a year and a half ago. So these scores are good for a while, but the percentiles might change. So I'm going to start with my lowest and go up. So my quantitative reasoning math, so historically I actually liked math and pretty good at it, but again, don't use it. Didn't really have a lot of time to prepare to understand these things. So I scored a 141, which according to the ETS GRE, that's the 10th percentile, the 10th lowest. So that's not a favorable score in their eyes. The next section I scored higher in was the verbal reasoning. I scored a 146, which is the 31st percentile, which for me felt acceptable. I vocabulary wise is something, I've expanded over the years, but I'm just not a strong suit. But again, like as you take these practice exams, you will really see that it's a game. It's a game, and you kind of learn the rules of the game, and including like the ones not spending time on. It really will challenge the way you can take exams as well. So the last I did most favorable in was the analytical writing, which is I got a 4.0 in. And I should know the scales here. I don't have them off the top of my head. I think that one might be a 6 or 7. Let's see if I scroll down. Does it say? So that was a 59th percentile. So that was a favorable one. The other thing you keep in mind for these programs, some of them they're gonna probably look at certain things more favorably than the others. So if they want you to, if it's a math program, they're gonna really look at the math score. Some might look at all of them. And just remember too, if you're trying to get into a program, yes, some of them I do know they have hard cutoffs, and that means if you're not at least in the 50th percentile, your application goes in the no pile. What I would say to that, and if there's a school like that you want to apply to, great, go for it. A lot of those probably have funding. That might be why you're applying. But if you don't get in, just remember, like, that's not a reflection of who you are. Whatever you want to go to school for, there is likely an option. For example, mental health fields, there's tons of options. For psychology nowadays, there's PsyD programs. There's PhD programs, which are probably easier to get into than others. So, I think that's really all I want to say, and trust yourself. I hope this is helpful for anyone that's kind of looking into taking the GRE. Feel free to comment below, share any tips that were useful for you, and please subscribe, share, and like the video if you're enjoying the content. Really working on making a diverse amount of content and create a community around that. So appreciate you following along. A plus.